on this. So good morning, everyone. I'm glad you were able to join us. Thank you so much for those of you that are already on. This is another of our bi-monthly episodes in critical infrastructure protection. I'm John Suarez. I'm with the Institute for Homeland Security, but more specifically, I'm with the Partnership for Healthcare and Emergency Management at the Institute. We oversee all healthcare and public health and emergency management sector for the Institute, and we're at Sam Houston State University. And I am also an IAHSS member, and I'm here with our Greater Houston chapter leadership, Dr. Rich Holter and Dennis Himes, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves as well. Go on ahead, guys.
Hi, I am the current chair. I'm Rich Holter. I also am a director at Memorial Hermann Medical Center, and at the Memorial City Medical Center, I'm the director of security there. And I've been here in Texas now just about 2.5 years. So I'm a transplanted Cornhusker. Don't hold that against me. I still can speak human. So welcome.
Well, that's great. And my name's Dennis Himes. I get the pleasure of working with Rich as immediate past chair for the chapter of IAHSS, and also a security director within Memorial Hermann. Been here right at 4 years in July, so we're right on that cusp. And so been a great experience, and looking forward to our talk today. So John, thank you for help setting this up for us and all the behind the scenes to get us at this time. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I just, we, at the end of the day, we just want to bring some additional value, any kind of value that we can get anywhere for IAHSS members, and to help them with their careers and their knowledge base. So today we are going to be talking about insider threat. And that's kind of a moving target sometimes on what the explanation is for insider threat, but we're going to be looking a little more specifically for healthcare and public health and why that's an important issue. In security, I know that generally you're well versed in making threat assessments and in working with a variety of different situations. This one, some people might say, is not necessarily within the realm of security. I would tend to disagree and say that it is within that realm, although maybe not directly every single day. So we're going to go ahead and start. We've got, let's see here if I can make this work. The learning objectives for today, we want to provide some knowledge and skills that you can apply immediately to the workplace wherever you're at. We want to discuss the insider threat, how it grows within a culture of acceptance that starts off with small violations. Usually everything that grows big oftentimes starts off with a small thing that doesn't get caught or doesn't get paid attention to, and then they tend to snowball. We're going to show how you can impact the ability to achieve your organizational objectives, describe effective multifunctional strategies for managing it, and develop a plan that helps competitive advantage. And you might think that competitive advantage is not an issue for security, but it's an issue for everybody within the enterprise, because every one of the hospital systems, the healthcare systems, beyond the mandate and the mission to take care of patients and people, also has to be a viable business so that it ensures that the mission can be completed in timely, cost-effective ways that keep everybody employed in the organization functioning. So here we go. I want to start off with this: cybersecurity and the Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. Most of you probably are familiar with CISA and who CISA is. I want to bring them up because they write some pretty good descriptions about many topics that have to do with infrastructure security. And again, infrastructure security, resilience, and continuity is what we do at the Institute for Homeland Security. We focus on the different sectors, and I happen to have the healthcare and public health sector. So we're going to look at their descriptions. Now, this looks like a lot of text than it is. But remember, what we want to do is have a conversation with everybody. We're going to start it off, but we do want input as we go through this. And at the end, you will get this slide deck. And Jake, I want to make note now, we have started the recording, correct?
Yes, sir. We've been recording since 9:30.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
problem.
So we are recording this. It is non-attributional, so we're not going to hang you out there. But this will be made available to you so that you get the answers from your colleagues. So first, what or who is an insider? Well, as you can see here, there's a lot of different examples on what an insider is and how that insider can then become a threat. It can be a person in an organization that the organization trusts, employees, organization members, those that the organization, the hospital has given sensitive information or just sensitive access to. They can be given a badge, might be a security badge you wear on your chest. It could just be one you put in your pocket that identifies that person with regular or continuous access. And that's the term you want to think about is access, especially continuous access to sensitive areas. A person who they've supplied computer network access, this person might develop the organization's product or services, can include secrets that the organization has. And of course, in healthcare, secrets isn't just top secret information on marketing, but we do handle a lot of sensitive patient information, practitioner information. Or somebody who is familiar with the business strategy and the goals and has future plans. So it could be business executives in the executive wing. Or in the context of government functions, it can be a person that has protected information and could cause damage to the organization or even national security. So what's the insider threat? I won't read all the fine print on that, but you can see the bulleted points there. It can be espionage, terrorism, unauthorized disclosure of information, corruption, including participation in transnational organized crime sabotage. It can include workplace violence. And here's where a lot of people don't include it. They think, really, that's an insider threat because they're thinking more along the lines of espionage or terrorism. Workplace violence fits into that, and that is a growing problem, as we know in all the institutions, or intentional or unintentional loss or degradation of department resources or capabilities. So, insider threats manifest in a variety of ways. You can see that violence, espionage, sabotage, theft, cyber acts. Expressions of it are defined in detail below, and they can have a number of different descriptions. Violence. Dennis, you want to handle this one?
Yeah, so without reading each definition, I think we can all really relate to the workplace violence issues that are taking place, and there's that violence that takes place on the domestic side that we don't hear too much of, right? Because of, the relationships outside of work, people don't want to talk about their private lives, but when they're at work, if that private life overtakes the work activities, it then becomes a nuisance or a business interruption, and definitely would be a threat related to that, or people that are being stalked from those types of things, those love interests that went wrong. And even the patient situations with those relationships, when you think about that, it comes and goes. Everyone working in a hospital, the primary reason they're there is they're seeking care. Maybe for the right reasons, but maybe even for some of the wrong reasons too, but these outline a couple ones related to violence for us that we have to look at and pay attention to. Next slide.
Right.
And then espionage, John mentioned this earlier when we talk about the spying and, other ones looking at things that happen, but we also are in a very political environment that everyone is a part of, and organizations take different positions with this. And so when you look at it from economic, government, and criminal, there's all types of activities that are going on that are probably below the radar, but they're using networks at work for some of this stuff, and some of their own private as well. Next slide. And then sabotage, as we look at this as well, I think all of us on the physical side of the world, when we look at things, we are protecting those, one fear is the IDF or MDF closets where we have card readers or cameras and things like that. And so, the greatest thing we can do in our security program is try to validate, people that have badges when they come in, or when the person says, hey, my badge isn't working, can you let me in? The piggyback or tailgating are two different things. And so we want to be careful, in a hospital, we're always nurturing, right? So, hey, let me help out this person, or, hey, it looks like you're struggling to get into this area, versus, hey, let me call someone to help you with that. Or if you wait right here, we'll get some help related to it. So where it says maintenance or IT procedures, you really got to watch those areas, because that guy that or girl that has a badge, that looks like, I'm from another Memorial Hermann location, my badge isn't working right. So what would security do? Hey, let me see that number on the back. Wait right here, and I'll see if I can check your access for you, or check the name. Those are some things we can do, just very cursory, to help sidestep these opportunities. Next slide. And I was going to go over one more with you, John, I think.
Right.
Theft, so, this is again, the financial or intellectual property. I'd say this last one is really the one that all of you on the call today, probably either you've learned through this or you hear about it when it's too late, right? And so I know, just real quick from our media relations side, they want to put a camera in front of us when the good things happen, right? However, media relations wants to be there when the bad things are there, so they can talk right for the organization, because intellectual property is also about your brand for the organization, not just you as a person, but what's going out there with project work, activities, and things like that. So those are some of the things I wanted to share, John, with some of these slides.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate that. And that was some good wisdom on that. So, Rich, you want to handle the cyber?
Sure, cyber. And again, when we talk about cyber threat, though, there's crossover with physical threats, correct? When we think about that, as Dennis mentioned, even a cyber threat can be originated from a physical threat. The idea that someone's piggybacking in on their card, getting into a system or an area where they shouldn't be, or maybe where someone steals intellectual property in the form of a briefcase with a disk in it or flash drive that has all the information that can result in a cyber threat. So cyber threats are not just IT related, they're physically related as well. So that's where our crossover is between physical security and cybersecurity, in that we both are protecting those entities in different ways. So cybersecurity, of course, we have unintentional threats. And I think IAHSS reports about 61% of cyber threats are unintentional, where people have been, non-malicious, that they've exposed the system. How many have gotten a phishing email? If you don't raise your hand, you're lying to me. And, everybody's gotten a phishing email, right? And because we don't intentionally say, oh yeah, I want to give my information to them because I'm giving them these people. No, you're giving them people that you've been hoodwinked by, and that they're taking advantage of you. So those unintentional threats pose just as much or even more danger than a lot of other threats in the cyber world, because there's right now about 61% is what IAHSS reports in the medical environment is what's happened, is where our threats have come from. So, and then we have the intentional threat. Okay, and those are the people that maybe have an axe to grind. They have something that has occurred with the employment where they want to harm the employer. And so they start looking for weaknesses, or being an insider, if they worked in the IT world, they may know our weaknesses already. And all they have to do is take advantage of those weaknesses and get the information. Next slide, please, John. Let's talk about different types. So we have the malicious insider, right? So they're the employee who misuses that legitimate access that they have. Okay, they are already on the inside. They now know how to break through our systems, where our weaknesses are, and they can gather that information. But then we have inside agents. Okay, those are the people that have been recruited by an external party, actually to steal, alter, or misuse, or delete our confidential information. So they're working on the behalf of somebody else that has their axe to grind with the organization or wants to take advantage and profit from the organization. And then we have our emotional employee. Okay, so our emotional employee is someone who's been harmed by the organization in their own mind. So because they've been harmed, they want retribution and they seek to cause harm to the organization because of that. And as we just talked about a little bit, the reckless employee is the one that, and right now, think about with COVID, there's a lot of studies done in COVID and how things were developing so rapidly. And, we've lost a lot of our workforce. And because of that, we have more reckless employees because they're working through things rapidly, because they're trying to do the job of multiple people because we've lost that employees. And so we have to be very careful and think about things. I've seen emails that come across and the minute I hit reply, I go, oops, because I was reckless. I was in a hurry. And so now you need to look at those. You need to look at the headers, those type of things that we all know, we've all been told and we all teach others, and then we get caught by our own trap. And then we have the third-party users, right? Third-party vendors actually account for about 36% of all the losses, according to IAHSS. So we got to be real careful of our third-party vendors. We often rely on them that, okay, they've got great security, they've got all the backbone that they need right there, and they're not going to harm us. Well, they're very likely to be the ones to harm you, because if they do not have the same firewall protections and same internal physical security protections that you have, then you're susceptible to their losses as well. So we want to make sure that that partner is as strong as we are. Next slide, please. Okay, that pretty much says it all. If you look at it right, this is the guy we expect to see, right? Is that guy on the left? That's our insider. That's our criminal. He's after us. Nowhere do we expect to see, in reality, Dennis Himes in a suit or John Suarez in a nice suit coming in and causing havoc in my system. But yeah, that's the person that you have to be really leery of, is that one that's already there, already dressed and meeting your dress code, and they're the one that's going to harm you. Next slide, please. John, you want to take that?
Sure. All right. So the typical insider threat, a typical example might be exactly what this says, and involves a disgruntled employee, oftentimes of privilege level access, of stealing sensitive data or disrupting networks. Somebody's gotten upset with the organization for some reason. They may have had expectations that weren't met, or they felt hurt or abused, neglected, whatever reason. But then they go after the organization. One of two ways, either just to hurt the organization or to hurt the organization and steal from them. But they usually have a privilege level access where they can steal data or just disrupt the networks. And by the way, I want to throw in here in the middle of this that for all of you that are listening, for all the attendees, this is a conversation. So we're sharing information, but if you have something that you feel that you want to share about this, either you didn't understand it or you have an example from your particular situation or some other input, please raise your electronic, your virtual hand, or even just take yourself off mute and say, hey, I've got something I'd like to add to this. Believe me, we will not be offended by that. That's actually what we're looking for.
John, when we're talking about insider threats and we're talking about workplace violence, which Dennis so eloquently discussed, we have the threat from the outside, right? So we have, the patient may be inside causing this workplace violence threat. And in healthcare, that's been really reluctantly talked about. Nurses have often thought that was part of their job, to accept, being slapped around by a patient. They see that as part of their job. But even worse than that, the one that's really not talked about is peer-to-peer violence. Okay, the idea of your coworker or your boss or physician who is causing you a violent episode or causing you stress in your life because they're threatening or intimidate you. And that's one we don't talk about a lot, which is a true insider threat.
That is an excellent point, and I do want to address that. We're going to come to a section a little bit later that focuses a little bit more on WPV and some of the aspects, but that is an excellent point. And if things are not talked about, they're never going to get resolved, right? And it's not just talked about internally at your hospital. Hospitals across Texas, across Houston, across the nation that I work with are all facing these same issues. They're all struggling to see where the benchmarks are and where they can get best practices, but there's always that timidity, that hesitation to share data and information because of liability issues or competitive issues. But we'll address that in a little bit. Insider threat here, as you can see, it's not just limited to healthcare IT, as Rich had said. Violence, espionage, sabotage, theft, cyber, they're all, and in all of these, you have different functions of it that can be expressed. So you have to stay alert and aware of the entire situation, kind of your situational assessment. Here's the threat attack from insiders is real and substantiated. These are the three most common insider threats that we've found. It's modifying or stealing confidential or sensitive information for personal gain. The next one is theft of trade secrets or customer information to be used for business advantage or to give a foreign government or another organization some leverage. Or it's sabotage of an organization's data systems or network. Those are the three that you see most. And again, it is an IT problem, to be sure. IT is tasked with putting together the firewalls and the other protections that are on there. But IT doesn't have eyes on the people that are in the organization, either as employers or as third-party contractors all the time, or even as guests or patients. So that's where then it rolls more to security, being aware of these things and helping out. Now, Forrester Research, who is a leading research house in industry, is the greatest volume of security breaches. 36% come from ignorant or careless user actions, to what Rich said. And I realize we're repeating some of this. It's okay. Some things bear repeating because they happen so often. And that this may cause breaches. The research from their own Insider Threat Manifesto revealed 42% of IT professionals thought ignorant users pose the greatest risk to their organizations. And this you can get at that particular link. You're certainly welcome to go look at it just to help validate.
Hey, John,
Yeah.
can you step back real quick? I know we've got
absolutely. There you go. Go for it.
We got some data and numbers popping up here, so we'll confuse all the math wizards here pretty shortly. But at the same time, here's what's kind of interesting. And, Rich mentioned earlier about, the phishing exercises. How many of you have received, hey, if you fill out this survey, you'll get a $50 gift card to Amazon, or, hey, how about if we do a consult with you, click on this link for an application to get paid. And next thing you know, you're getting the IT alert, hey, you just clicked on a phishing exercise that we did internally. So hopefully your organizations are doing that. And again, we are so caught up in overlooking the obvious, and so I don't know how your networks are set up, but for us with Memorial Hermann, just what I can share. So you have an external is next to the email address, and we all do that double window, right? We get to see the message without opening it versus closing that window, and you have to look at every message. And if it's external and you don't recognize it, click delete or hit the fish button, right? But I look at this a little bit more, John, because look at our remote workforce. And I know that we're putting this together from the threats and the risk to organizations, but where are the remote workers that are using data specific to your organization using that network? And I know, like for me, I learned something a few years ago. You walk away from your keyboard. What do we normally do? We just leave our workstation open, right? Hey, it's your private office. But what if you're off of a public hallway? What if the nurse with the cow or the wow walking down the hallway doesn't hit the little window button and L. If you do window button and L, it locks your workstation. So the next person behind you has to log into it, right? So those are quick little things you can do, but they're not tricks, but they're tips, you know? And so you look at some of this and where it says ignorant users, I don't like the word ignorant. I think it's just, you don't see the risk based on your workload, right? And so people, they just don't have that thought process. So it's almost a daily learning. So I just wanted to make some comments about this, you know, because this slide sort of resonated with me just in my day-to-day that I'll get a notice for one thing or another, and I'm supposed to help promote this to the highest level in our roles, you know. So telling on ourselves of how we can be better. The last thing you need is a breach of the system from that data, and what is the things we talked about earlier with your brand, the intellectual property, did they get into your system and things of that nature. So our ISD IT folks, they have a huge job, John, and it's its whole little world, but we're seeing more of it, and we can do our part as in the insiders.
No, Dennis, you're 100% right on that. And a good part of my background in industry was in IT and in risk management, so I concur with what you're saying on that. I want to throw out some thoughts here on it. I have been guilty, I have to admit, that when we run through the cybersecurity annual training that most organizations have, let's face it, it's not the most stimulating, thought-provoking stuff that's coming out. It's kind of the same old thing, and for most of us, it ends up becoming a check-the-box thing. It should be more than that, for me included on that. But it's too easy to just run through it the way it is. I'm looking to see how many folks might be interested in doing cyber escape rooms. I saw one organization when I was at a security conference that, in fact, I think it was at TDM, that where they had a cyber escape room.
Wow.
That became the training. So one of the things that is becoming more popular is to gamify the training that we do. So security training, whether it's cybersecurity or other, is to gamify it and make it almost a competitive environment that people can enjoy. It stimulates the thinking, it stimulates team environment, and even some competition on that. I noticed that somebody's got their hand up here.
Yep.
Go on ahead and
Yeah.
jump in.
My name is Chung. I'm with Memorial Herman. Just real quick on Mr. Dennis's point. Any thought about using AI to help mitigate incoming? I mean, you know, obviously we can screen our own emails externally, internally, but how much do we want to depend on the future of AI to do this for us, to say, hey, this is definitely a phishing email, internal or external, but again, who's programming that AI, right?
Good point.
So I don't know. I haven't seen. I know AI is a new topic, especially in our field of security. I know some people are sensitive to the thought of a sentient being doing our risk analysis or assessments and things of that nature. So just a topic to bring up.
You bring up a great topic, and that whole AI thing, especially for security, I will say it this way: it's a two-edged sword. There's some really good advantages that you can get with it, and I have used some of those. However, it again, over-reliance on it can put you in a compromising position. For instance, I will tell you, there was a story here recently that was in the news and that we saw. I'm doing some cybersecurity training and exercises that I've done with John Ridgey, who is the cybersecurity lead and risk management lead for the American Hospital Association. And he's a former FBI counterterrorism cyber guy. He puts on a heck of a training, by the way, and I would endorse that anywhere. But one of the things that through that training that we were able to see is that there was an example of an organization where a mid-level financial manager that had a fair bit of access was duped by deep fakes that were generated by AI. Now, keep in mind, deep fakes are extraordinarily realistic, not just in the recognition of faces and the way that people dress, but even in the voice. These cyber criminals are professional. They're very good. They capture all this. And long story short is they had a Zoom meeting with this guy that worked in this financial manager. And the people he was having a meeting with was the CEO, the CFO, and one of the executive vice presidents. They all gave him specific instructions about moving finances to different accounts. No reason not to do it. He's looking at them in their offices on their Zoom account. And to his perception, it's the president, the CFO, and executive VP. Unfortunately, he was the only human on the Zoom call. And they moved tens of millions of dollars to different accounts, all generated by AI. So something to keep in mind to the point that was just made on that. By the way, these attacks can happen very fast. There was a large port that I won't mention, a large government organization, that from the time that the breach was made until it reached their central database was 21 seconds. I mean, the speed is frightening. 21 seconds for a major government installation. Huh?
Not much time to interrupt that one, John. I mean,
oh no, there isn't, but it shows you how fast some of this can happen if you don't catch it. Now we're on slide now 18 of 40, so I'll try and keep it moving a little faster. Now, what are the consequences? Well, you can see some more data here on the insider threat. 50% suffered operational disruption, 48% saw loss of critical data and IP, 37 experienced damage to their brand. So it is extensive. And let's face it, in healthcare, if this is compromised, it can extensively impact the brand and the trust level that the public or other organizations have for you. Examples of insider threat indicators. Now, here's some indicators on this. And you can see there's quite a few of them. There's personality, finance, abusive behavior, security, performance, foreign connections, substance abuse. These are all parts of doing a threat assessment. And you can see the questions in there. I won't go through all of that, but you'll end up with a slide. But there is a way to do some threat assessments, just like there is for any other type of threat. Let's say workplace violence. You know how to read certain people. You can see the way they're acting, the way they're moving, words they're using, etc. This is the same.
Yeah, I think, John, if I may, and you mentioned it earlier, these don't start off as go for the gold, right?
Nope.
These start off as small incidental threats where they're testing the waters, so to speak.
Very much.
And, they're seeing how far they can get and how, doing security penetration to look at and see where our weaknesses are before they then go for the gold. But so that's something that we need to look for, and that so we don't ignore the small things, right? Because they may lead to the big things.
That's a great point. Go ahead.
Well, and Rich, just to comment off of that, we see all kind of different threats. While we look at this from the cyber and physical world, those issues involving personnel, right? And so those type of events, oh, well, someone left a note on my car, or someone sent me an email that threatened me, versus other things that then escalate past your HR department, might go to legal. And sometimes we don't connect the dots because it's a single or isolated event, but it might be more to that. So where you have an opportunity, just a quick plug is for those organizations that have threat management teams. We've changed the landscape, just how we work, how we worked socially. COVID-19 has changed so much for us, good, bad, and indifferent, but also improvements on how we're doing these things, right? And so if we're taking a better look, so while these are the indicators, Rich, the one that stands out when you said is just that it's small enough, we don't pay attention. because we get so distracted with so many other things that we're trying to accomplish. But don't forget, there's a lot of other resources in front of you. So beyond today, there's always that association outreach to whether it's the Boston chapter or the Florida chapter or someone else within IHSS, the SIGs that are out there on platforms to ask for information. It's right at a keystroke away, right? But it's important to us. So we can keep moving on with that, John. I just wanted to support you guys. Just a lot of great things.
Excuse me. You can see here, again, just some more numbers. I won't spend much time on that. We've already discussed a lot of the threats and a lot of the impacts past on that. So now insider threat takes many forms, as we've already seen. We're going to look a little bit more here at the workplace violence. You can see the harassment of victims, emotional abuse, behavior, mobbing, bullying. Now, the impact of bullying in the workplace is quite significant as well. It goes beyond just the impact to the person, although let's face it, that's significant and that should be seen as one of the main reasons that we want to stop this, is because it is abusing people. But you can also see how the impact for your organization will be. 43% of remote workers are bullied. 61% of bullying is same gendered. 30% of American adults are bullied at work. Think of that, 30%. That's almost a third of all workers suffer some kind of bullying.
Wow.
76.3 million workers are affected by bullying. And again, bullying sounds, it sounds like that schoolyard thing, right? You got some kid that's a bully that's just pushing people around, trying to steal their lunch money, etc. We've all seen that.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, in Texas, we tend to take the route of, well, hey, just stand up and don't be a wuss about it, just push back kind of thing. It's not quite as easy as that within a workplace environment, let's face it, because maybe the bullying is coming from a senior person or your boss or somebody else. And in a work environment, it makes things a whole lot dicier. You can see here it's a frequent part of the healthcare cyber world as well. And you can see there it happens online quite a bit. You may not see it coming where someone is getting bullied, but you might be able to see some of the results of it. You can read people in security. Keep in mind, they may be having some issues that are coming through online as well. And I want to speak here a little bit to something that Dennis said about, again, we're going back to the everything starts off small. I'm working with Dr. Robert Emery, Bob Emery, Safety Bob, over at UT Health Science Center, Houston. And Bob is the VP for risk management over there. And he is just an absolutely brilliant guy, keynote speaker and researcher. And he does a lot of work with retained losses. And that's death by 1,000 crises. We all prepare for the big crisis, hurricanes, active shooters, terrorism, everything. But there's 1,000 small crises that happen in healthcare every day, whether it involves a person or not. And the crisis might be that you have a deprecated air conditioning system or a door closure system. It's all of these small crises that start adding up money losses for the organization. And all of a sudden you find that the organization has lost $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, but because they're all under the insurance premium guideline, nobody pays attention to them because, well, it's only $50,000. It's only $30,000 here. It's $80,000 there, all adding up. So all of these small crises become a big one. The same thing happens in this environment. Small crises in behavior, in relationships, in responses start adding up to bigger issues. Now, here again, I'm not going to go through all of this as well. The six risky misconceptions about workplace violence. Well, it can't happen to me. Potentially violent people can be profiled and screened out. Well, I think we all know that that's not exactly true. Only crazy people commit workplace violence. Workplace violence is about murder, and security guards and metal detectors will keep us safe. I'm going to let Rich and Dennis handle that one with the rest of you.
Yeah, Dennis, if I can, I'll tee off for you, and that's I'll tell you and remind you that we have 35,000 employees at Memorial Hermann, and how many security officers do we have, Dennis? Is that like 320?
I thought we were between 300, 350, somewhere there. So that, it's up and down.
So that's a lot of people per security officer in order to keep everyone safe. You're not going to get a bodyguard. It's not going to happen. So everyone has to take responsibility for their own safety. Is probably the message that I am getting out of this, and that's that I can do all I can to put a moat around this place, but then we won't have these. It used to be said that healthcare would be great if it wasn't for patients.
Well,
the problem is we got to get those patients in order to have our organization.
Yeah, and Rich, when you mentioned that, I think we could all relate to it as security professionals. What are a few things that we want to know? We want to know who's here. We want to lock every entrance, and we want to make sure that only authorized people are here. But healthcare is about the doors always open 24/7, so everyone's welcome. So those risks and those threats, they walk in the door and they look like just a regular person off the street. And until, we see all these different things happening, like you mentioned, it'd be great, but not great if there was a security person with each patient interaction. But what message does that send during patient care? Like, why are they here? Well, we don't want you to act out, well, if you don't act out, we're not here. So it's a constant circle, right? And so, looking at these, the other thing you've probably seen at retail locations, parking lots, the signs that say, see something, say something, and I think we've adopted that because that's just our nature, right? But patient care is about the patient, and they want to care for them first. So while it's not a nursing presentation, they are the ones and medical staff that are doing the good work. So when you are a patient and you go to the hospital, you know what you're there for, but we have bad actors and we have all these things happening. So how do we protect everyone? See something, say something, be accountable for your own personal security. And then we go through training, education, and things of that nature. So I won't get too far off topic because I know we're on the workplace violence, but these are good misconceptions. But those on the call today, I'm sure you relate to this and in your environment, so who owns it? I think Rich mentioned it. It's us. It's education, it's information, it's all that we can bring forward to make our workplace culture, as the slide shows, a safer environment. We have regulatory issues of what are we doing to protect everyone here? That's patients, visitors, and staff. And so I think the next slide kind of highlights another thing when we talk about workplace safety is our employees, their families, and things of that nature. So here's a nice photo. Hey, John, was this you younger out on the beach, with your family? Is that one of those personal pictures you threw in here, sir?
No, that is an undisclosed security person.
Okay. But they're all smiling. They're all smiling and happy. And how much are you seeing that when people come into the hospital, especially through the emergency department? There's not a lot of people smiling, are they? So you're dealing with a range of emotions that just captivates, does all the above to be positive and negative in those moments of trauma and things like that. And so the next slide I just want to highlight real quick, John, that's after this one, is that, the workplace violence prevention plans, you also see some of this, that while the sign says not part of the job, Rich mentioned it, that nursing, medical care providers, that has become part of their job. I know we went to school or went through the academy, or we go through our training to take care of those threats, right? Doesn't feel good to get hit, kicked, punched, or spit on. But that's kind of our training, right? Nurses doctors, they didn't go to school for that, and they get real world experience when they come out, right? So while this is just one slide that talks about it's not part of the job, how have our cultures, developed over time to where we are today? So I just kind of throw that out there. If there's anyone on the call, I know we have around 10 minutes left. We still have more slides, but John, these are the things that we're seeing, and I think it continues to rise, with all the things that we're doing. How do we change that? How do we move our culture to safer environments?
Good points, Dennis. Now, we actually have till 11:15, so we have
Oh,
about
okay.
20
Okay.
minutes left,
All right.
which is
Excellent.
fine. So please, again, any of you that have experience in this, or that have thoughts about this or something, please don't hesitate to do as the gentleman did beforehand and jump in. We need the conversation. We need to be able to hear from everybody on this. Showing respect and dignity to all, we know, here's the thing, we know that already. Here's violence is more likely to happen in workplaces that have no policies, management that ignores threats. You fail to screen new employees, fail to provide training, terminate employees without due process. That seems to be a big one. Ignore an employee's complaint about another employee's behavior. That seems to be another big one. One of the things I want to stress here, the Institute, the Partnership for Healthcare and Emergency Management, just completed developing a new healthcare community safety and security micro-learning course that we're going to be sharing to all the systems here before too long. We just rolled it out live at Huntsville Memorial Hospital, a smaller rural hospital. And this training actually was conceived at IAHSS at the ACNE in 2023. And so it's been in process, and Dennis has been a part of giving great input. So is Rich, a number of folks from different healthcare systems. UTMB has helped with this, Texas Children's, HCA. We've had a number of hospitals and systems that have weighed in. Security, law enforcement, doctors have been involved in this, nurses, administrators. The point that I'm making with this is that this is a community issue. It's not a security issue. Insider threat, workplace violence are not security-centric issues. They are a community issue. Because oftentimes, security is not the first ones that start when this, or are there when this starts. It's a doctor, it's a nurse, it's an administrator, somebody else, a tech. And so the training, the approach needs to be a community approach where doctors see security as their partners, where nurses see the same thing, see doctors, and where everybody's relying on each other as a team that's unsiloed. You don't want silos of perfection. You want a community response, because that community response ends up becoming your community culture on all of this. And everybody looks then for the threat assessments and the responses together. We'll talk more about that training. It's micro learning. So I know everybody's going to go, oh, geez, more training. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of training out there. And because it's workplace violence and it's threats, it's become ubiquitous out there. There's a lot of it. You don't have time. You might be a charge nurse. You might be a security official, a doctor. So this is micro learning. One of the big things we got from IAHSS was that it needed to be something that could be used on the job. So none of the segments are more than 8 to 10 minutes long, and you can do it on your phone or your pad. And you can do it with a team or solo. So this way, hopefully it helps to do this on the job, either by yourself or with your team. So insider threat prevention does need a buy-in on this. You can tailor your program to your institution. You can build a culture of reporting and prevention, as you can see, multidisciplinary capabilities, apply the frameworks, establish protective and supportive culture. Again, we're talking culture a couple times there, and assist the organization in providing a safe, non-threatening environment. Those are all awesome points, and we all agree with them. Nobody's going to disagree with them. How easy is it to do these with 35,000 employees, 300,000 employees? Or where, if I remember correctly, I think Memorial Hermann has 200 locations, something like that. And it tends to be the same for UT and some of the other groups. I'll pass that back to you, Rich, for a
Yes.
comment.
Yeah, this is difficult, to propagate a culture of safety across the organization. And, but we do have tools similar to the app that you're designing and testing right now. There are tools out there that help us do that. We have Workplace Violence Committee. We have, and again, the approach has to be multidisciplinary, right? Even our threat assessment team, the best approach is multidisciplinary. Our workplace violence team, multidisciplinary. This isn't a problem owned by any one entity. It's owned by everybody. So we all have to share the wealth. And that means we got to get information across the system. And the best way to do that is by representation from across the system. And so getting that buy-in, everybody should be going through the idea of what's in it for me, but they should also be looking, therefore, but the grace of God go I. And because we're all subject to workplace violence. Unfortunately, it can happen to any of us. And so we always have to be looking at protecting the other person, which is also protecting ourselves. And it's also competitive. John, you mentioned earlier that you don't look at healthcare as being a competitive business, right? But it is. People have choices now. There are a lot of choices in Houston for healthcare.
Yeah.
And if I make my target so hard that it's not friendly anymore, it's not a place you want to go. I mean, I could put all my officers in full Kevlar, and actually I could put them in armor. I think I'll put them in armor and chainmail, and I'll put them out there, and that's what my nurses will be wearing too, because I don't want them to get hurt. So they'll be wearing chainmail so they won't get scratched. It'll be great. But when a patient comes in and sees that, they're going to say, I'm going to turn around and go the other way. And they're going to go down the street to the next hospital. So we're balancing that all the time, that welcoming atmosphere with a target hardening that's just hard enough to try to make it safe.
Well, you are 100% right. There's perception goes a long way, but there's also the internal perception when you're not even talking about patients and you're talking about peer-to-peer, doctors, nurses, security, everybody together. It's a tough balancing act because workplace violence, as we know, has grown. It used to be workplace violence. Somebody punched you, somebody kicked you, somebody bit you. Now it's also includes somebody called you a name or somebody threatened you. Now somebody looked at you the wrong way. Somebody postured wrongly. It's becoming one of those issues that organically seems to grow and then puts everyone on edge where we tell them to work together as a team, be a community in the approach, but sometimes it starts feeling like you can't trust anybody because you're too worried about, what if I don't say this phrase right? What if I don't make the comment right? What if somebody just says, well, that was threatening? I feel violated. We've taken a lot of terms that were different, and those terms have migrated to different definitions. And that puts everyone on guard, which makes it hard to work together as a team sometimes. And then it makes it hard sometimes to be welcoming because you're afraid of, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do it the wrong way? What's going to happen? And there it becomes really important for leadership to be able to lead the way and support so that you at least feel like, I'm going to, by faith here, take the chance to do the right thing because I know that my organization, my leadership has my back and they'll have the support. These are all tough issues that we don't have quick answers to, but they're worth working on continually. To your point earlier, nobody just ever snaps. Stuff starts. And here's the key is to start watching from the minute. Now, don't be suspicious that just because somebody comes in and they're in pain from an accident, something else that's going on, that they're going to act out wrongly. but it's always good to be alert and situationally aware, and to just keep an eye out on all of the things that we know about threat assessment. There is a continuum of behavior here. Situational awareness, you can see civil, uncivil, misconduct, illegal, criminal, and you can see some of the breakdown on that particular slide. Dennis, you or Rich want to comment on that, or anybody else for that matter?
Yeah,
How does that vibe with what all of you think?
anyone out there? I know that when you look at it, the green's on the good side, right? Red is bad, and the yellow's in the middle. I mean, I can understand the colors, but it also, comes back to everyone else who has your use of force activities that are happening out there. And we use that term, within security. That what does that look like? And people are moving back and forth in all of this, John. And so you have people that are coming in that are, generally we see that they're seeking care and they're here for a reason. We have coworkers that are here to gain and earn a paycheck, and a living and promote the organization. And then we have everything else that kind of fits in there. I remember when I first got into healthcare 20 plus years ago, in a hospital, you had an event and it seemed like the whole hospital would stop. And risk would be involved, quality, the doctors, med staff, everyone, what's going on? Why is this patient acting this way? You just turn it around to where we are today. Depending on your organization, you have 1, 2, 3 events a day per week, and it's just become common practice. And so how do we shift that? And again, I know this is the continuum behavior, so it fluctuates and always moving. But how do we find ways to keep that non-escalation environment? I've seen signs that talk about respect co-workers because they're family just like you. So we have a campaign, a kindness campaign. We have badges that we do things at different times. I can help, or ask me how I can help. We do other things for co-workers as we work together. And some organizations have your employee assistance programs, or Memorial Hermann adopted just over 2 years ago to start what's called Code Lilac, which is emergency first aid for employees. And so this is employee behavior, as we talk about this, that also is happening at the patient level, the visitor level, and things of that nature. And so those are some of the thoughts I had related to this, John.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick, John. So, my wife has been a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner now, and I have some clinical background myself. So there's a paradigm shift maybe 15, 20 years ago or so where, we were healthcare and it slowly began and is now customer care. We're retail, retail committed, like the customer is always right. We want to satisfy them. We want to have great patient satisfaction scores, which are more important than apparently our safety at this point, where that shift has gone now. We're hopefully swinging back. Texas and the federal legislature have changed those laws about assaulting, first responders and nurses and so forth. So hopefully that has swung back the other way. But just on that thought about, the customer is always right. We're going to do whatever it takes. We're going to get beat on, smacked around, pushed around, bullied for the sake of the customer, just to get that patient in here, and hopefully the administration team, including security as well, has, seen the lights where, there has to be some consistent consequences to actions, or before there was none, perhaps. Where we thought, well, they're going to give us a terrible score. We're just going to go ahead and not report this assault, so just a thought on that.
I think those are valid thoughts. I do. I think those are very valid thoughts. Again, that's part of that balancing thing. On the one hand, and we'll look here, and I'm going to move to what we're looking here at significance of nonverbal communication. This will play into it a little bit. You're right. There is patience and patient safety. But to what Rich and I were also talking about, because it is a business that has to maintain, patients are also customers that are paying. whether they're paying out of their pocket or whether they're paying through insurance or whatever else. So I don't think it's an either or, it's a both and. There's a balance that you've got to strike between the two. I can tell you that I have personally witnessed good customer service behavior that has de-escalated and diffused situations faster than a command and control presence has. And I've witnessed that in Houston, at Texas Medical Center, at different locations. It's not that you don't want command and control, you do. Let's face it, there's a line there that goes, and my boss is a former law enforcement officer, used to be an assistant police chief in California. And he shares with us that, look, there's a thing of customer service where you go and you're winning the person over at the very beginning at a traffic stop. You want to be polite, you want to be respectful. I don't just walk up to the window and say, show me your driver's license. He would walk up and say, hi, I'm Officer Michael Asplin with the Monterey Police Department. And the reason I stopped you is you were speeding, or I stopped you for speeding. So he's giving them all the information for all the questions they're going to ask at the beginning. And could you tell me, is there a lawful reason you were speeding? And so trying to make it lighthearted and very open, but knowing that there is a line at some point where it's, okay, at this point it goes to command and control and I'm putting you in the back seat. So there is that line, but it started off with recognizing this is a citizen. I'm going to give exemplary customer service and respect. And if they cross that line, I and every other police officer will know that now it's time to go the other way. Same thing you guys have got within that. And the significance of nonverbal communication sometimes is 65 to 93% of the meaning of a message. We're going to move through this a little bit faster here. One of the challenges for healthcare is masking. Masking does hide, let's face it, some clear lines of communication. You're not going to be able to read the facial expressions quite as well when everybody's masked up. You may not be able to see a grimace or an angry look quite as well. And yes, the eyes are very expressive. I watch eyes, I watch feet, I watch hands, and I watch the way their body leans. Same thing as you guys do. But there are some things in healthcare that might block that a little bit. So 3 main listening skills: attending, give your full physical and mental attention to the other person; following, engage using eye contact, use unintrusive gestures; and reflecting, paraphrasing, using the feelings. And this is, by the way, really, really, really good customer service, is to be able to come back and paraphrase. And I saw a guard at a major healthcare facility at Texas Medical Center do this, where things had gotten just ridiculously out of hand in the ER. And in walks one lone person, young guy, walks right up, talks so low you can hardly hear what he's saying to the first agitator. But within about 3-4 minutes, this person is literally going, I am so sorry, you are right. I apologize. I don't know what came over me. And granted, they don't all go that way, but he repeated this with both people. And what he did was he listened. I could see him listening to their thing. He paraphrased it back to them and said, I understand. Let me help you with that. But what you're doing right now is impeding my ability to be able to do this. And when I asked him later whether that was his de-escalation training, he said, no, working through college, I was in retail. Mad customers want to burn the store down and hang the manager. You know, he said, I just treated them like customers who weren't getting what they needed. Now, granted, it doesn't always go that way, but it doesn't hurt to try it either. Risk assessment. Note body language indicators for listening. You can see some of those. You've all gone through the training. This is all good stuff, and you should maintain it. Although keep in mind, what I tell emergency managers is don't let your well-rehearsed plan become your jail. Don't let your well-rehearsed training become your jail, because then you just start going for rote on, well, this looks like this, so I'll do this, and you go down. Then you find out that it wasn't that way at all. You misread it, because let's face it, on the one hand, people are messy, but on the other hand, people are very unique too. So what works for 5 may not work for 1. Strategies to de-escalate emerging insider threats. Rich, run with that one.
Yeah, so de-escalating emerging insider threats. Of course, we have employee assistance programs. EAP is always something you want to have in your back pocket to refer an employee to. Family counseling, mental health counseling, job retraining, financial planning, assistance. So you have to talk to someone in order to figure out the problem, right? You have to do a triage. And once you identify the problem, then you have all these things sitting in your back pocket, and you go pull out your card and you hand them the card and say, here we go. This is where I hope you can get some help, and then you can come back and we can talk some more. So we talk about medical counseling, legal counseling, all those things help us, and we have to use those tools and use them appropriately. Of course, pulling out the wrong card at the wrong time can escalate rather than de-escalate. And we always have to be wary of that. So making sure that we don't insult someone when we're trying to talk to them, make sure that we actually are listening to what the problem is, listening for what the root cause of their problem is, and trying to get them the right help. And we know all targeted violence, John, starts usually with a grievance, right? And if we can de-escalate and get rid of that grievance, we take away the threat. And even when we're up in the ladder and we're already getting threats, if we come back down and we take care of the grievance, we bring everything back down to normal plateau. So, dealing with targeted violence means going through the force spectrum, in other words, the spectrum of violence, and looking at it from various aspects and trying to get back to base. And getting back to base is taking care of the grievance.
I think that is a perfect way to say it, Rich. Taking care of the grievance. It's really problem solving.
Yes.
What you need to do, you're solving a problem and coming up with a solution for it. And maybe that's a simpler way to do de-escalation, is just to look at it and go, okay, there's an issue here. I need to solve it and come up with a solution for it. And that's always going to mean that you need to understand what the problem is first, before the angry patient who lashed out at a nurse and maybe just pushed their hand away because they were in pain. To stop long enough to go, was this really a workplace violence incident? Did he mean to hurt the nurse, or were they just in pain? Let me find out what the problem is. And as you go through that, you might be able to resolve a lot of issues a lot faster. I think that's one that most people are probably trained pretty well for. And this is a huge slide. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the pathway to violence, as you can see there at the bottom: grievance, ideation, research, preparation, breach, attack.
Yeah.
It's a full slide. But again, sometimes people just snap. If you're a patient and you're in pain and somebody touches you wrong, or you feel like nobody's paying attention to you, it may feel like you're just snapping. But there's been something that led up to that. Right. And so we come back to, again, we're not going to do the role play right now because we are getting close to being out of time. Keep in mind that insider threats are cyber, they are espionage, they are theft, but it's also workplace violence. Anything that is a threat to the institution, to the employees, or to its customers/patients is a threat. And at the end of the day, it's a community response. But let's face it, security is going to be looked at to lead the way.
And John, real quick, I'm going to share with everyone part of this topic. I had a level of interest of learning some of the language and nomenclature, and so I just put in the chat. There's a book I started reading called Inside Jobs. Really good, high level, and it's from 2020. So the timing of it, well, I'd say with just a couple of years right around COVID, really good information. So take a look at it. And while we didn't specifically deep dive in some of those categories, and always can come back for a future one, we have threats and we have risk. And so we're always trying to mitigate, reduce those, and keep it at the lowest level. Like Rich said, just deal with it at the lowest level possible. And we subvert those longer events to just maybe we hit it right there, we took care of it, but we want to kind of watch it, over time. when we have more information as it comes through. But thank you for today. I appreciate those that were on the call to be able to engage and bring information forward, John. So thank you.
Thank you to everyone as well. We'll make this PowerPoint presentation available to everyone. We'll be posting it on our website. Of course, it'll be part of the Houston chapter's library as well. I encourage you to visit the IAHSS resources. They are vast and deep and very good, as well as the Institute for Homeland Security and Partnership for Healthcare and Emergency Management at Sam Houston State University. We will be making another one of these collaborative efforts for August, and we'll make sure to bring that to you. And if there's ongoing interest in having even deeper discussions like this, we might be able to do some of these live, where we do some exercises and some live tabletops in all of these areas where we can have a little bit more input. Other than that, I think that should pretty much wrap everything up. I'm going to stop sharing the presentation. Rich, anything further you want to say, sir?
Only thing I want to remind you, the biggest thing in workplace violence for us has been getting good reporting. So I would close with not my job. Okay, not my job. Nurses, employees, it's not your job to get beat up. So we need to report it up. Report it up.
Well, and to that point, let me encourage that. Dennis and Rich and I are both part of a working group that is looking at the problem of not having data, up-to-date, relevant data that is shared between the hospital systems, where you can pull really good information to set benchmarks and to set clear best practices on this. To Rich's point, report it. Don't be silent. Make sure you say something, but also get involved. This is an enormous issue. The only way it gets done is if you lock arms and you just work hard to get the solutions at some point, even if they take a while. I think that's it then for today. Thank you so much. I think we'll sign off then.
Thank you, John. Thank you.